Right now, somewhere in Scotland, a baby is being born with red hair. It happens less than 2% of the time, worldwide. In Scotland, it happens more than 10% of the time. In Ireland, it's roughly 1 in 10. In parts of Scandinavia, it's noticeably higher than almost anywhere else on Earth. In the United States, it drops to roughly 2%. In most of Asia and Africa, the trait is essentially absent, not because it's being lost there, but because it likely never arrived there in the first place. That is not a coincidence. That is geography, written into DNA. Every redhead alive today carries a tiny accident in one gene. The gene is called MC1R. It sits on chromosome 16. Most humans inherit one working copy of this gene. Redheads inherit two broken copies, one from each parent. That single mutation changes how the body handles light. It changes how the body handles pain. It even changes how the body handles anesthesia. And despite headline after headline, this gene is not going extinct. Let's start with the myth itself. In 2007, a story spread across the entire world. Redheads, it claimed, would disappear completely by the year 2100. The story came from a hair care company survey. It was not a peer-reviewed scientific study. No geneticist ever made that claim. No data ever supported it. But the headline was simply too good not to share. Why did it spread so easily? Because rare things feel fragile, even when they aren't. Here is what actually happens to a gene like MC1R. Recessive genes do not get phased out. They hide. Two brown-haired parents can both silently carry the mutation. Neither parent shows it. Their child can show it completely. Geneticists call this carrier status. Roughly 1 in 4 people of Northern European descent carry it, without ever knowing. So the gene is not disappearing. It is simply waiting. Think about what that actually means for a population. If carriers never show the trait, the math gets strange fast. 2 silent carriers can have 4 children. Statistically, one might be born a redhead. The other 3 might carry the gene forward without anyone ever knowing it's there. That is how a trait can stay rare and stay permanent at the exact same time. Now here is the strange part. MC1R does not only affect hair color. It controls 2 different pigments in human skin. One is called eumelanin, the other is called pheomelanin. Most people produce mostly eumelanin, a brown-black pigment that blocks ultraviolet light efficiently. Redheads produce mostly pheomelanin instead. Pheomelanin is reddish, and it blocks almost none of that light. That is why redheads burn instead of tanning. Their skin was never built to filter strong sunlight. So why would evolution keep a trait this exposed to the sun? The leading theory points north. It points toward a place where the sun barely shows up at all. Northern Europe receives a fraction of the sunlight that equatorial regions get. Pale, pheomelanin-heavy skin lets in more ultraviolet light, and that light is required to produce vitamin D. In a sun-starved climate, that trade-off might have been worth the risk. For thousands of years, that risk paid off. Without enough vitamin D, the human body can develop rickets, a disease that softens and weakens bone. In a place where winter sunlight is scarce for months at a time, any mutation that pulled in more ultraviolet light, even at the cost of sunburn, may have quietly kept entire generations alive. Dr. Jonathan Rees, a geneticist at the University of Edinburgh, has studied this for decades. His research helped confirm something specific. MC1R variants become dramatically more common the further north you travel across Europe. In other words, red hair might not be a flaw evolution forgot to fix. It might be a solution to a problem most of the world never had. Here is where the story gets even stranger. MC1R does not only touch the skin, it touches pain. Researchers at the University of Louisville found something surprising. Redheads need roughly 20% more general anesthesia than other patients to reach the same level of sedation. That single finding changed how some anesthesiologists approach patients before surgery, simply by asking about hair color and family history. At the same time, other research found something almost contradictory. Redheads are more sensitive to certain kinds of heat-based pain, but they are less sensitive to certain needle-based injected pain. 1 gene, 2 pigments, 2 completely different pain responses. How does a single mutation end up rewiring something this unrelated? The answer lies in where MC1R actually works inside the body. It is not only active in skin cells, it is also active in a region of the brain tied to pain processing. Pigment cells and certain pain receptor cells develop from the exact same early embryonic tissue. One mutation can quietly affect both systems at once. Your hair color and your pain threshold may have been decided by the exact same line of code, months before you were ever born. Even Neanderthals appear to have carried red hair. A 2007 study extracting ancient Neanderthal DNA found a different Neanderthal-specific MC1R variant. It produced a similar result: pale skin and reddish hair. Two separate species, evolving the same solution independently, tens of thousands of years apart. That is not a coincidence either. That is convergent evolution, answering the exact same problem: not enough sun. Red hair has also carried a strange cultural weight. In parts of medieval Europe, some folklore traditions linked red hair to suspicion and superstition. In Tudor England centuries later, it became fashionable instead, partly because of one famous queen. Elizabeth I ruled with bright red hair, and the trend followed her through the court. Two completely different reactions to the exact same trait, separated by only a few centuries. Even outside Europe, red hair shows up in unexpected places. Mummified remains in ancient Egypt have been found with naturally red hair, and some ancient Egyptian texts associated red-haired people with the god Set, a figure tied to chaos and the desert. Centuries later, in Renaissance Italy, the painter Titian made red hair so fashionable in his portraits that the color auburn is still sometimes called Titian red today. The same handful of genetic letters, worshipped in one era, feared in another, painted into masterpieces in a third. So the next time someone claims redheads are vanishing, here is the actual math. A recessive gene, carried silently by roughly 1 in 4 people of certain ancestries, cannot simply disappear. It can only become rarer through migration, or through intermarriage far outside carrier populations, or through pure chance repeated across an enormous number of generations. Even global migration patterns don't move fast enough to do this. Population geneticists estimate that significant shifts in a recessive gene's frequency typically take dozens of generations to show up in the data, not decades. A century of global travel barely registers on that timescale. None of that is happening anywhere near fast enough to erase it. Red hair has survived ice ages. It has survived mass migrations. It has survived the extinction of an entire other species of human. It is not a fragile trait clinging to survival. It is a quiet, persistent accident, written into less than 2% of the world. It has outlasted ice ages, outlasted empires, and outlasted an entire other species of human that may have carried a version of it too. A hair care survey said it would vanish by 2100. The genes inside roughly 1 in 4 Northern Europeans say otherwise, and they have been saying it, silently, for 500,000 years. And it is not asking anyone's permission to stay.